Hey, everybody. I'm welcoming my new guest. Been dying to interview her, Amy Vetter. And just so you know, I attended the 2018 National CPE Educators Conference in New Orleans, and Amy was the kick-off keynote speaker of this conference. And let me just sum it up. She knocked them over. I mean, it was a great presentation, and we're going to talk a lot about that because it's tied into her book, Integrative Advisory Services, Expand Your Accounting Services Beyond the Cloud. And for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, I just put the book up so you can see. If you're listening, please also watch it on YouTube. Amy, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to spend some time with me today.
Well, thanks for having me on.
I've been looking forward to this, and I appreciate you sending me a copy of the book because I read it and I really, really enjoyed it. It's a toolbox. It's every firm should pick up this book and read it and begin to think differently.
Well, thank you. And most people don't say, I just enjoyed every minute of an accounting book. So that's a big deal.
Well, let's set it straight now. It's not a debits and credits, and
Exactly.
it's not a Kiso and Wygant 55th edition of intermediate accounting. And I'll just start off by saying the reason why I liked it because you used a lot of stories in here.
Yeah.
And real life stuff and how you help and the challenges that the profession is facing with technology and what we can do. And you tie in family members. And I thought that's why I think it's a fabulous accounting book.
Thank you very much. No, I tried, like you said, I have a long history in the accounting profession, starting from my grandfather, which I talk about in the book, but also having my own practice. And really, when I started my practice, it wasn't cool to have this type of practice. I definitely, as a CPA, other CPAs were like, what are you doing? And I, started an audit. That was my background. But when I started my practice, and this is really before technology was anywhere near where it is today, I didn't want to do audit or tax as a sole practitioner because I was worried about the liability.
Right.
So I started really by accident along the way to this type of practice because originally I thought, well, I'll do a bookkeeping business. And what became interesting was the calls that I got in were different than what I expected. And it was business owners asking me to help them do their books,
Okay.
Where they had questions and they still wanted to be in control of it. And it was definitely in the beginning times of QuickBooks Desktop. And, that really, I started moving more into controllership and advisory services. And when they needed bookkeepers, bring in bookkeepers. But that's, your business kind of changes based on who calls you. Right. And over time, I just kept searching out technology. What would make this easier? What would make this easier? And, was definitely on some of the first hosting software ever when those came out, and file sharing. And then over time, this has really become a pretty big passion for me to really stay ahead of where technology is to help the accounting profession as a whole evolve and be able to deliver the type of customer service our clients need so badly.
Exactly. I get mesmerized because we speak the same language. But I have to ask, so when did you close your firm? Now, let me rephrase that question. What made you close the firm and turn your business model now into an author, a speaker, a keynote person?
I was always a speaker. So, I think I look back, even in college, I was like the teaching assistant. I just love to educate. Mm-hmm. I was an adjunct professor. I'm actually going back to that a little bit as well at University of Cincinnati.
Go Bearcats.
Yeah. However, when I started my business, growing up in an entrepreneurial family, I had started my experience in accounting with all the Fortune 500 companies, being an auditor and working for KPMG, and then through internal audit at Fortune 500, and hadn't really worked in the small business space since I had been young. When I opened up my own practice, I remembered how much I wanted to help small business owners because they don't have the tools that a big company has or the expertise. And so I started this, really getting gratification going one by one to a client and helping. But what I started finding is I was getting asked to speak or do workshops. And when I could see that I spoke to accountants, I could actually help thousands of small businesses at a time, because each accountant represents all of their small business clients. And really that one-to-many, that even if it's just one accountant in the room where you turn the light bulb on, you can affect so many small business lives. So that really took my passion in a whole nother direction, that I ended up selling my business in 2010. And I've been, working at technology companies, being speaker for technology companies, but also it's just my passion to really, this is just such an exciting time in the accounting profession, because it's all come together in this moment where people are actually opening their eyes to what we can be and how we can help. And it's just exciting to be a part of that as a speaker and author at this time.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing how the profession is recognizing that just counting beans is not going to get them, into this next century, into this next, 10, 15 years. I remember, when I was trying to do we call them soft skills, but I tell them, don't you think they're pretty hard to master?
Yeah.
Doing this type of programming, I was always a pushback. We need it, but I'm not going to invest into it. And most of my business early on was, basically teaching accounting, because I taught accounting at Ohio Dominican, doing all of that. But then over the last 4 to 5 years, I don't teach any technical accounting anymore. It's all this based around the concept that improvisation is a communication tool. And I see the light bulbs go off and these ideas, and this is where we need to take. So I see that excitement out there. And the ones who I don't see the excitement with, they're ready to retire. And really, they should retire and turn it over to somebody who can take the firm into this next iteration of accounting.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I think improv is a great way to coin the term, just because that's what advisory services is. You can't plan for the question.
Right.
You have to be okay with the answer of, I don't know, I'll go look for that for you.
Oh my
and
God.
not have to be an expert on the fly. But, clients appreciate that as far as customer service. I would say with the succession planning issue, I totally agree. There are definitely partners that, and it's a struggle within the firm of people that want to change the firm and partners that are retiring that don't want to invest in it. But the scary part is, and the more I work with different firms, they are risking retirement or being able to retire, because if they don't make that investment, there's no one that's going to want to take their spot, because really someone can go and just set up technology in the right way in their own practice and not have to pay for the expense of trying to change what somebody else has in place. They don't just pay for customers anymore. They need to make sure that there's an infrastructure that's going to take them into the future.
Exactly. And I think those I love the word that you're using, because you're questioning me if you're really an accountant. Because
I am half yogi. So.
I hear more accountants use this term. What's it going to cost me? But you don't use the word cost. You use the word, it's an investment. And I've been on this crusade of, when you just change that usage of word, it has a whole different meaning. And investment's more of an action word. It makes you think long-term. A cost is something like, right now and it's gone, I'm never going to recoup that.
Mm-hmm. And investment means your future of retirement.
Exactly.
It's a very scary time for all these people that have worked so hard to build a firm, work 60, 70 hours a week in their life, and then you get to retirement. And because you haven't made that investment to change for the future, you're looking at what you expected to happen not happening. And so it is a really important thing to take the time right now and effort and get the right people involved in the firm that you're looking at to be the leader next, so that you can set them up for success and empower them to really give guidance on what to do next.
Right. And so let's take that and let's move into your book, because I think by not talking about the book and what we're saying here, I think it becomes very clear. Now, you said you had family members, and you start your book off talking about a family member who started their career in accounting.
Sure. So I actually didn't know him that well, but he's actually been kind of a guiding light in my life, because my grandfather, who died when I was 3, was used as an example a lot as I grew up. So my grandfather was a CPA in you're talking the profession started in like the 1880s. He was a CPA in 1935 in Minnesota. So very different time in the accounting profession. His family was a family of immigrants. And so, many of the stories that I had growing up was about how he was really trying to help other people. Everyone's trying to get out of their situations.
Right.
And so, he didn't necessarily get paid in money. Sometimes it was fur coats for my mom each year, or, they got tickets to the symphony because he played violin. So it was a very different time as far as, because everybody just had to use what they had to get ahead. So that was really my perspective, because that was the stories my mom told me, and she had chosen not to be an accountant and went into art. And I think always felt that she had let her father down or made a mistake. And so, very early on, by the time I was 12, I was saying I was going to be a CPA, and I didn't even know what that meant. So, but what I did know was my mom later on opened her own business that I worked in from a very young age. And I did want to help people like my mom. And she would take me to trade show events and Chamber of Commerce. She was involved with construction management companies because they were maid service. And so I started hearing the stories of all these business owners and really thinking originally I was planning to go work in her business once I graduated college, but her business had closed by the time I got out of college. And so it was really having that in the background between what I had heard about my grandfather and knowing what small businesses go through of why I wanted to help. Now, I didn't get there right away because I went through the traditional public accounting route, and I was like, this isn't what I was told. This is not what I thought. And, just kind of kept, going through that. But then when I opened my business and saw how much you could help, but it really takes, going back to the improv or creativity,
right,
as an accountant to be an advisor, because, businesses are asking you questions that, they're trying to figure out a better way to go about their business, and using your financial skills, you're helping save businesses. You're helping them stay in business. You're helping their families, their employees' families. It's the most rewarding job as an accountant, I believe, when you can get in that role.
Right. Instead of delivering a product and service, you're delivering an experience. You're delivering more than that. Call it client relationship, outstanding customer service, outstanding experience. But as a gentleman a partner in a firm in Maryland, we were talking, and he said, "Yeah, I try to provide that experience because they just like you started your business for some passion. There's a reason why, and I want to find out what that emotion is so I can understand them better." And I said, "Brad, you said emotion. You sure you're a CPA?" And digging down, he goes, "Trust me." He goes, I almost got out of public accounting, started my own firm because of that. But the firm that he's with now, they just gravitate on it, and just getting to know that client a lot better than just a transaction.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of accounting firms get stuck because they start, pricing themselves out like, oh, well, this firm is less than me, as far as what they charge, or the bookkeeper down the street. But it's really to the customer. It has nothing to do with the price. It has to do with that. What are they getting out of the experience? They can get a tax return from anyone that just pushes a tax return through email to them. But is someone actually caring about me and my business and my worries that I have at night, and can actually help me overcome that? And when you become that with your client, there is no one that they would leave you for because they can't imagine not running their business without you.
And as you're describing that, I went, "Oh, I remember." See, I was paying attention at the presentation. You basically call that in your book, and mentioned that cherished business advisor.
Yes.
Not trusted, which we've been talking about in the profession for a long time, that trusted business advisor. But when you described that, I went, well, when you have that cherish, trust is built in there.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think the more that we recognize that we really need to be that cherished business advisor, takes the business to a whole new level.
Yeah, when I was writing the book, it actually took me a while to figure out that term. I searched and searched for the word I was looking for, because I was remembering some clients I had that, like, for instance, I had a construction client during 2006 in South Florida that was taking a huge hit, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I was working as their outsourced controller, and then I had a bookkeeper on the account. And I would meet with them once a month. And her thing about coming to me in the first place was saying, I was a VP at a large Fortune 500 corporation. Now I'm running a small business, but I need to still think like a corporation, and I need someone like you and your business. But then when they got hit with everything that happened, she called me one month and said, "I only have $200. Will you meet with me?" And I'm like, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Right? Like $200, it didn't matter the money, but like $200 to her at that moment was like $10,000.
Right.
And so the fact that she was like, what can I get as far as your time with that $200 that will help me survive? And so when I was thinking about that, we call ourselves trusted advisors, I looked up the definition of trusted, and that means you're honest and sincere. And to me, that doesn't describe that relationship, because that's what we should be. We take ethics courses, we take the CPA exam and say we're going to be ethical. Something about being a CPA represents that.
Right.
And hopefully any of us that are accountants and have the responsibility that we have to our clients, are ethical people, right?
Right.
So I don't feel like that's something that you should be striving for. You should just be that. But what you want to strive for is to be cherished, that your clients can't imagine not having you as part of their business, because you are providing so much value that the money is not the issue. It's like you're an integral part of their business.
Right, exactly. And I love how you just framed that whole piece there. And for those of you who are listening and or watching, take a moment and reflect back on this cherished business advisor. And if you're not one already, how can you become that? And it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
But if you start taking these little steps every single day, next thing you know, you will have evolved into that cherished business advisor. So with the conversation, because you're a technology expert as well, I forgot the credential. What's the
CITP and CGMA?
Yeah, the CITP. So we've been hearing for a long time technology is going to have an impact on the profession, and all these jobs potentially could go away, which I don't believe. We'll just mold into something new. But what challenges do you see out there as it relates to technology and the adoption of technology that firms might be dragging their feet on or going, wait. I remember that whole thing called IFRS, which turned out to be like the metric system in the U.S. So until something happens, I'm not going to pay attention to it. This is something you need to pay attention now because this happened.
Yes. And I think that's a good comparison, because when we are given a standard or regulation, we're really good at changing. But when we're given this is where future is going, but there's not necessarily a standard or a checklist of how to get there, we drag our feet a bit in this profession. And so that's really why I wrote the book, because there's lots of checklists in there and steps to help you along by doing this. But if you think about it, there's no desktop software out there that's innovating. It's in the cloud. This is where technology companies are spending their money.
Right.
And this is where the future is going. And your clients have an expectation of that as well. And like you, I don't believe that accounting is going away. The skill set is so important, but we've gotten away from our expertise, what we know on the inside, and selling that as a service versus a paper return or an audit report. That's actually not the product. Our advice is always the most important piece of this, is what somebody needs from us. And the problem is, and going back to your example, is firms traditionally have always focused on A&A credit. And that's, whether I do audit or not, or tax, I have to take that kind of credit. And instead of spending time on the soft skills that we need to have, and like you said, it takes time to evolve that and a different mindset in the accounting practice to teach it. Because too many times when I give this talk, when I explain advisory services and what it is and how to deliver it, many partners in the room will be like, oh, my staff can never do that. Well, that's just not true. We have to take time to delegate, and we have to take time to trust our staff and teach them, and not just leave it to, well, we'll see if they can flail in the wind and figure it out.
Right. So next time a partner says, "Oh, my staff can't do that," just pause for a moment and go, "Well, let's take a moment and have a little fun. What if they could? What would that look like?" And somebody just recently taught me that, and I love that, because what would it look like if we could, and start pushing them down that path so they'll start thinking about it.
Visualizing it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it really does take the shadowing, allowing staff people to come in to client meetings that you might have not had them come into, and just watch the conversation and how the back and forth goes, and how you went about, where you give them the opportunity to ask you questions and say, how did you know that answer? Or where did you go to find that? And so that they can start building those skills up as well. But, when we have such a linear firm, we eliminate that opportunity to allow lower staff people to see what managers do, what partners do, and so forth, so that they're ready for that next level and can start building those skills.
And how do I bill for their time?
Exactly.
Sorry, I did that with a straight face.
It's an investment.
It's an investment. And I shared this story. A friend of mine who's was in a firm in the DC area. One of her clients, the tax return was done. So she said, "Hey, how about if I just drop it off?" It's on my way home. Partner said, "Fine." when she dropped it off, she was so surprised that somebody came out to visit her. She goes, "Do you want to learn more about my business?" And she was in the horse business. And my friend spent 3.5 hours going through the barns and understanding and came back the next day and shared the story with the partners. What did the partners ask her?
How did she bill for it?
Exactly. How did she bill for it? And she said, I basically resigned at that point in time.
Mm-hmm. By doing what she did, she probably brought in $10,000 more business for the next year if that had been worked, the right way.
Right.
Because she cared. There's not an entrepreneur in the world that will not talk your ear off about their business. They love being asked about their business. They love telling you all the great things they've done. And they also want to be able to trust somebody that they can tell you where they're not doing so well too.
Right.
Someone to confide in.
Exactly. And so this partner in this firm in Maryland, his name is Brad Hoffman. I asked him once, I said, so what do you say when somebody says, tell me about your firm? He says, I really don't at first. He goes, I asked him, well, tell me about your business first. And then he goes, on the side, just what you said, what business owner doesn't want to tell you about their business? And just from that aspect, he says, I'm just listening the whole thing. And then after they're done, I'll give them a twist or a turn or tell them about our business. But no, I just want to learn more about their business. And he goes, he's able to keep and attract more business that way by doing that. Other than saying we got 35 partners, we had 100 associates. We've been in the community since the 1800s. We give back and we reinvest in the community. Those are facts and figures, and nobody cares. You're not differentiating yourself. But until you can, I always said if I was a member of that firm, somebody said, tell me about your firm. I would go, we're in the people business because we really care about the people that work with us and about our clients and their families. By the way, tell me more about yours.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a whole section in this book about sales process, but it talks a lot about the open-ended questions and how to practice that as well if that doesn't come natural to you. And that it's a really important thing that your friend is doing, because when he comes back to talk about his business, he's going to frame it against what the pain points of that client is. So when you were talking about that you struggle with cash flow, we have a whole team that's what they focus on for their small business clients, and they're able to usually turn around businesses within a year, or something like where that's a better way to explain your business, because then it's like, oh, I want that, because I need that, rather than, like you said, just listing off all your service lines that actually mean nothing. Who knows what write-up means? I didn't mean to catch you at the wrong time.
No, I'm glad I swallowed that water before I did that. But yeah. Well, now you're speaking accounting to them, and accounting is a foreign language. That write-up, what the heck's a write-up?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Nobody. And I think that's the other challenge we have in the profession is taking that complex information that's between our ears and be able to put it in context. So somebody can understand, even within our own profession.
Yeah. And speaking in your client's language.
And speaking in your client's language, not the language of accounting. Because as we both know, you say depreciation to a non-accountant, and they think that's the value that they lose in their car when they drive it off the new car lot.
Right.
And you're going, no. It's a systematic allocation of an asset over time.
Yeah, exactly.
So technology, I hear a lot now about AI and blockchain. Now, the first time I heard somebody say blockchain, I thought it was an intestinal disorder. But I found out it's not. It's a big impact into our profession, and I'm seeing more and more state societies and accounting today write about AI and blockchain. Can you, at a 5,000-foot level, kind of explain blockchain?
Sure. So I will do my best. But basically, with AI, machine learning, and the evolution of cloud accounting, a lot of times these things are looked at in the profession like it's taking our jobs away. And let me tell you, I talk to businesses from all different professions, and every profession is dealing with disruption right now because of this, right? Because anything like accounting that's as structured as it is, AI and machine learning can enter, because that, then there's a structure to program into a system, which is what causes us to step back and retool and create a different experience with our customers. So what artificial intelligence is basically taking our own business intelligence and trying to program that into a computer so that the computer can start figuring out those things. And the difference is machine learning actually starts learning that intelligence rather than us programming it in. It learns from what the programming is doing. And then there's a singular way of looking at machine learning where it might code something for us on an invoice and so forth, where, because it's been coded that way a million times, the computer has picked up that that's the coding you should use in a transaction. Or when we go into deep machine learning, it tries to mimic what our brain does. So if you think about all the neural networks in our brain, they're all crossing and interconnected because they start learning from each other. Well, that's the same thing in a computer system once we get to deep learning. So an example of that is if you've heard of Google Translate, it will not only recognize a picture of what that picture is, but then it's also going to translate that into your language. So it gives you a multiple layer look at, the machine figuring out different ways to communicate. So that is a disruptor in itself because, a lot of the maybe data entry work the machines can start doing that isn't necessarily a value-added piece of the engagement. It actually frees up our time so we can spend more time with our clients. It doesn't bring our value down. What it does is give us the information quicker so that we can start analyzing it. Now with blockchain, this has been a disruptor, especially where the AI CPA is looking right now in the audit space, because, and I think 80% of the banks right now have projects in place with blockchain. That, you think about it as a chain, but it's a chain of transactions, and this chain can be anything. It can be titles to properties, it can be all sorts of things. But because one piece of the chain interlocks with the next one, it's harder for fraud to occur because they're all dependent on each other. So you would have to be able, if you wanted to alter a piece of the chain, you would have to alter everything before it and then what it affected after it, which would be pretty complex in the system. Not to say it couldn't happen, but the risk of it happening is a lot different. So the AI CPA has been, really trying to work on the audit side to get exposure up to this because, eventually, most likely, where the audit is going to go is more about cybersecurity and auditing the actual technology and where the information is filtering from rather than the transactions, because the transactions are most likely correct if the technology is working properly. And so when you have a blockchain, basically another way of putting it is this triple entry accounting is the record is on the blockchain, but it's also in the accounting system of or system of record from the supplier and the customer all at the same time. So it's all being recorded at the same time and marked with the same identifier. So that's my quick and dirty.
So, no, I appreciate that. Because I asked Tom Hood a while back, and he goes, I'm still learning this. I'm still trying to figure it out. Yeah, and that was probably about 8 months ago. So I love how now it's, the ability to explain it has gotten a lot better than it was, less than a year ago. But as you're talking, the one thing I'm hearing is, okay, we're going to get the information quicker. We'll be able to do more. Hey, wait a minute. I got a budget in there for this many hours that we've had over the last with this client. So I'll have to cut that time down. Well, that's going to hurt my revenue stream.
Exactly. And so that's where your billing has to change. Just because you got smarter or you put better technology in place to deliver the service that you're doing doesn't mean your value was brought down. And there's no way for each client to duplicate the kind of overhead and investment you've had in your business in order to deliver the service that they're getting from your firm. So it's important to start looking at what is the value of what you're delivering beyond the technology, but also the technology itself, but not looking at time as your inventory.
Right.
Because when you start looking at time as your inventory, that limits your opportunity and you're actually cutting yourself short in the end.
That was my biggest shock to the profession. I got into it a little bit later. I entered when I was 30 years old. But what do you mean I got to keep time?
Yeah.
I thought this was I didn't know we have a time clock. And then billing on 15-minute increments and then billing a customer for a phone call was just, people looked at me like I was crazy while I'm looking at them and going, I don't get it. But I over time, and one firm shared a story with me that a client called them up, asked them a specific question. Okay, thanks. Next day, called back, asked another specific question, hung up for 3 days. And finally, whoever he was calling goes, wait a minute, this is weird. Something's going on. Let me pick up the phone and call the client. And the first question was, are you going to bill me for this time? He goes, no, I'm not. Tell me what's going on. And that was the point that the client opened up and said, the issue at hand, and how can you help me?
Mm-hmm. And I think, exactly what you said. When we bill for every minute, it prevents the conversation from happening. And sometimes we're just looking at the symptoms of a problem, but not the actual problem, the root of it. And so we take what's face value just to get the work done, rather than really trying to uncover that. And that's something I talk in the book as well about, is the difference between tangible and intangible. And that's something that really defines an advisor. So we can look at numbers and explain a number away, but when we actually start meeting, like if you're dealing with a retailer, walking into that store and understanding how it operates, talking to the retail manager, talking to some of the customers, and really seeing the intangible pieces of the financials and the operations, then you can give real advice back of like, well, what I actually saw was this. And that looks like it's creating more cost for you because they're duplicating their job 3 different ways.
Right. And I had an article published about, I think it was 2 years ago in Accounting Today, that the title was, It's Time to Get Out from Behind Our Desk. Mm-hmm. And basically talking about this issue. You can't be, you may be the CFO, hopefully it's the CFO, not the CFO of the company. But if you're managing the business from your desk, you're missing out on a whole lot. You've got to get out there and understand all silos of the business in order to be that cherished business advisor to the organization.
Yes, absolutely. And that's really where the value comes in, because you just showed you cared. It's like going to that horse farm. And there was probably a lot she uncovered there from a financial perspective that could help that client really improve as well, just by being there.
Yeah, but she's no longer there.
Yeah, exactly. All that was lost.
All that was lost in a very short sentence. But it goes to the culture, it goes to the attitude, and really that is a lot of being that cherished advisor. That positive mental attitude. That sometimes we're just afraid to ask questions, but we need to ask questions in order to understand. But I think the perfectionists of CPAs, and we don't like to be wrong. That's the way we were brought up, especially back in, as we've transitioned, that if I have to say, I have to find the answer. I'm not the expert, but no, I said, and unless you know it a 100% verbatim, then if there's any question in your mind, get back to them in 24 hours.
Right. Well, and another, place that with talking to staff or management in an accounting firm that I think happens too is a culture isn't creative of innovation. Culture isn't created for innovation. And so too many times staff are set up where they are asked to go figure something out. And because they came back with the wrong answer or failed in coming back the way that they were expected, sometimes that can be used against them for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. They can't break from that one mistake that really was a learning opportunity for them. And so when we think about the culture in an accounting practice, we have to make sure that there's a culture open for people to have those mistakes, because that is the only way you learn. And if you're telling everybody and micromanaging them on the answer, they're never going to learn as well. You need them to go through that process and go, well, this is how I got to that answer, so that you understand how they think. Mm-hmm. And could go, well, next time you go through this, these are the 2 things you should change in your decision-making process, else they don't grow.
Right. In improv, we say bad ideas are just bridges to good ideas. Yeah. No ideas lead to nothing. And we also say that when you want ideas, bring a brick, don't bring the cathedral. But you have to put, innovation and ideas, because we're a very conservative profession. When we ask for ideas, if this is safe zone here, we ask for ideas, they're not going too far off of safe. I have no bandwidth to create. But if I can get them to believe in crazy, just something completely almost inappropriate at times, to come, I've got more bandwidth, so I can come here in the middle. And I've shared this before on the podcast. I was doing a creativity session, Fortune 500 company in Maryland. They brought their U.S. emerging leaders and the Latin American emerging leaders in for a conference. And I got to do a half-day creativity session with them. One of the questions on the table was how we're going to increase profitability in the firm. Raise revenues, cut costs. Okay, got it. Go deeper. Mm-hmm. And this one gentleman from Latin America goes, I tell you what we're going to do, my friends. This is how we're going to increase profitability in our company. We are going to kill all of our competition's salespeople. Everybody laughed. I panicked for a brief moment because I wasn't expecting that. But I said, if you believe what the bad ideas are good ideas. So I just took a deep breath and I said, I'll tell you what, let's take murder off the table. And in a short story, I said, instead of killing them, why don't we identify them and poach them? Let's try to steal them. Let's offer them more money. Let's offer them a bonus. Maybe we can attract them that way to help and stay out of jail at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know this answer, but would we have gotten there without that guy taking me literally and come up with a really bad idea?
Right.
But we were able to turn it into something usable.
Right.
So when accountants are given ideas, and I said, if you ever do a creativity session, the managing partner or the partner who's leading it, if they're leading it, they're the ones who needs to throw out the craziest, stupidest idea that they have, which will loosen up the rest of the culture. If not, it's going to just fall flat on its face and go back to basically what you described.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah, kill our competition salespeople.
Yeah, that's probably not the idea.
No. So as we wrap up, you've mentioned a lot about helping small businesses, mm-hmm. but you failed to inform us. You have two businesses. Your speaking business, and I don't know when you find free time. But would you tell my audience what else you do in a business?
I own a yoga studio. Yes.
She owns a yoga studio in
Cincinnati.
In Cincinnati. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So we have over 50 classes a week and do non-heated and heated classes. We have virtual yoga and retail. It's my creative outlet. So.
Okay. So. Can I ask you to give the name of the business?
Yeah, Drishtik Yoga.
Say that again.
Drishtik, DRISHTIQ. Okay. So I made up the word. Drishti is your gaze in yoga. So it's staying focused beyond yourself, and it helps you stay in balance. So I added the Q to the end, so it's never ending. So,
nice.
Yeah.
And you had a group of what, about a little over 100 people at that conference. No, it was Michelle who started it with
the yoga. Yeah.
With the yoga pose, with everybody bowing.
Yeah.
And she said everybody, kind of squat, and I heard knees pop all over that room. Well, and I assume you have a website?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So my website's amyvetter.com. I also have drishtikyoga.com if you're interested in virtual yoga and you're not in Cincinnati. So I do sessions around the country to help accounting practices do this. I also have a second book that really integrates my yoga and business life called Business Balance and Bliss. And I do a topic about how to create work-life harmony so that you can be more real at work, set these boundaries, take advantage of the technology you put in place. So you don't always have to get more clients. It can be that you find your creative outlet, your hobby, so that you feel more complete as a person, and you're better with the people at work and at home.
Cool. And before I let you go, because those who are going to be watching this on YouTube are going to see in the left corner of the screen a music stand, and it looks like it might be a guitar back there.
Yeah, I play bass guitar, so.
Oh, that's right, you do. Oh, you want to play something for the audience?
Oh, no.
I don't know how you find time, but that is awesome.
That's all in my work-life harmony talk. So.
Well, I own 3 guitars and I don't play the guitar, so that's...
Oh, that's funny. Well, hey, you can have an appreciation and a love for music. So.
Yes, and
happy to look at it.
I use the guitars if I'm stuck in my head and I need something creative. I just start strumming. I'm going to teach myself one day how to play.
Hey, YouTube is your friend.
It is. Very much so. So, Amy, I just want to thank you very much for taking time and sharing this information with my audience. We'll have the websites for both for businesses in the show notes. I look forward to our paths crossing again very soon, and I wish you all the best luck in the world.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's been fun.
It's been a lot of fun.